Hi there, Forest River owners. Today on your 2015 Forest River Vengeance toy hauler, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install MORryde's StepAbove fold-out steps. So we went ahead and flipped it down. We've got our legs already adjusted for us here, and in comparison to your old underslung steps that have that give to it and probably makes your camper rock as well, these are extremely solid, giving us nice contact to the ground and to the camper. As I'm walking in and out, I feel very secure on them. The steps are much bigger on their base than what your underslung steps are. And I know the guys that go camping that have kids, the best part that they're gonna really love about this is with those underslung style kids going in and out, especially if it's early in the morning and you wanna sleep in a bit, this is something that is going to keep your camper from potentially moving around as much as it was with those underslung style, because it does have just that extra support here. And here we've got our raised surface, so if you got any dirt, debris, mud, stuff like that, you're gonna have that raised surface to cut through that, still give you traction. There's also grip tape in several locations to further increase the traction on your steps. Again, just making it even easier for you to get in and out safely. Now, when you're going to choose a set of steps like this, the most important measurements you're gonna need to get is gonna require you to go ahead and get your trailer set up and level where you would normally kind of want it when you're camping. Then you would want to measure from the ground to the step sill here, so that way you know the height for the length of steps that you're going to need. And you also need to know the width of your opening here, so that way you can get steps that you can ensure are going to fit in between the opening and aren't going to drag or anything like that. So on our Vengeance trailer here, the steps recently had to get removed down there for the ground control 3.0 system that was installed. So in order to be able to have steps for this door, MORryde is going to give us the solution that we need, because instead of having underslung steps that were in the way of the ground control system, we're going to be able to have fold down steps that fold down from the interior, and they're going to be a more stable step than what they had before. But again, it's also going to be compatible with this setup here. So there's a couple of things we're going to have to take off first to get out of the way. If you got a trim piece here across the front, we're going to use a number 2 square bit, or oftentimes you'll also see Phillips there. This particular one is only square bit. I guess there is maybe a little bit of notch there where you could get a Phillips in, but you risk stripping the screw more. And there were 3 on this particular one, so we just removed all 3, and then you can get that out of the way. Now, you may or may not also have a gas absorbing shock on there. We went ahead and also took that off because it's not going to work with the MORryde steps, because they do need to fold out, and this is going to be in the way. Just remove the fasteners on each side. There were 2 there and 2 over on the door side. We also needed a number 2 square bit to get that out of the way. Once you get your trim piece out of the way there, we can go ahead and take our steps and get them sat into position. So we're going to go ahead and just grab our steps here. They're going to slide down into place there. We want them to be all the way up against the threshold. And then we also want to center it. Once you've got it centered on each side, you can go ahead and use the included fasteners to run it in place. With this particular style that we've got here, you can see it's notched in each corner, which will allow us to access the screw hole in each of those sections, so that way we can get this installed. You may or may not want to do a small pilot hole. I took a little 1/8 inch bit and I did do a little pilot hole. This is wood material and it is quite thick. Now, if you do not have a nice thick wood floor, our toy hauler here's got a nice thick surface for the heavy equipment that you put back in here. But if you didn't have that, you could also do a nut and bolt, but you would have to provide your own hardware. But since we are going to just run it in there, I already did a little pilot hole there. Just run our fastener down in there. I'm going to leave it just a little bit loose for when I do the other side. Again, I also made a little pilot hole on this side. And then we can go back and snug them down. Before you fully snug it down, it's not a bad idea to just double check your left and right to make sure that it is centered to your liking. But once you do get it on there like that, we can take these steps, grab them by the bottom, flip it up, and see if she slides right in. And that looks pretty good. Both of our sides cleared there, and they usually do when you first pull it out of the box. Usually you have to extend it out. They usually come kind of a little bit on the inside just to make sure that it's going to be able to clear for you. So once you've got it slid up and these things are catching right there, That's now holding it in the upright position for us. So you can see each of our mounting hinges there have 4 slots, 4 screws. So we can see here now that each one does have a slot or round hole for the rest of our fasteners. Again, I also did take a little 1/8 inch bit and did a little pilot hole. I didn't go the full depth of the screw, just enough to get it started to make sure I can get it lined up easily and that we're less likely to split the wood there. So then we're just gonna run this in. And just continue doing that on down. They do kind of slot the holes just a little bit in some of these, so that way you do have that left and right adjustment here if you don't get them perfectly centered. You can always loosen them up and get a little bit of play out of them there. That's why I do recommend, if you are going to put your fasteners in, try to do it in the center of those slots so that way you get adjustment on each side. Fasteners that come with it are also going to be a number 2 square bit, but you can see that these do accommodate a larger Phillips as well. So this one has a less likely chance of stripping out when using a Phillips. But again, I prefer the number 2 square. If you've got that at home, that really drives it in solid. All right, so now that we've got all of those in there, the next thing you would want to do would be to adjust these to make sure that you've got them out as far as they possibly can go to get the most contact, but also make sure that you're going to clear. So you might notice that the one here on the left is pretty much almost all the way to the outside, but the one on the right here isn't, and we're probably not going to make too much adjustment to that because the hinges here on the door, we need to make sure we clear those hinges. To pull the door back down to check for your clearances, you'll want to twist the handle here, give it a bit of a pull, and if you look right there, you can see we're pretty close. So we really don't want to adjust that further. So that looks pretty good. We're gonna go ahead and just do another test before we come back to that. Just make sure that the steps come all the way down, kind of check your surface there, and then do a quick verification that the door does close. And that looks pretty good. Now it's not uncommon to potentially have a bit of a little mark there, and you have to do a small modification to the door, whether that's sliding it up and down on the hinges a little bit or just hitting it with a small file just to make sure that you clear. So now if you were going to adjust this, you would use a 7/16 socket to loosen up the 2 fasteners, and you could slide that back and forth. You may also need to loosen these fasteners if your adjustment is pretty substantial as far as how far it needs to go. For these ones here, you would use a number 3 Allen and a 8mm wrench to loosen those, and they are slotted as well on each side. So once you get it adjusted out, just retighten down those fasteners, and that'll keep everything secure for you. All right, and that'll complete your installation of your steps. At this point, you would just need to adjust it for the particular terrain you're on. The legs here are adjustable. You can pull those in and out. You simply just pull if you want them to come out further, but if you want them to go back in, you do need to press on the release here. And we found that's a pretty good adjustment for the level ground that we're sitting on here in our shop. Also down here at the bottom, I wanted to point out the quick release hinges. We can see the hinges there. The pin here is removable, so that way you can quickly take these steps out if you wanted to. You just pull this hinge out, flips up on each side. You can pull it out, set your steps off, and then put them back in, lining up the hinges and slide that pin back in. Now I'm not gonna lie, it's not an easy thing to line back up. That pin is in there pretty tight. Like I gotta push pretty hard. Probably use a small rubber mallet maybe, but you don't wanna bend your pin. So you just wanna be careful with it. Maybe even if you're gonna go back together, use a little bit of white lithium grease or something on that pin to help it slide in, because again, it is a very tight fit. It's not something that I would probably do too often, but I understand that sometimes there is a need to get these steps out of the way when loading and unloading. So that can be a really quick, easy way for you to do that, rather than removing all of your fasteners, which you really don't want to do. Every time you take those fasteners in and out, you are potentially going to compromise the threads. And that completes our installation of MORryde's StepAbove fold-out steps on our 2015 Forest River Vengeance toy hauler.